Hello and good afternoon. And of course, I want to offer our apologies. We're 5 minutes late, ladies and gentlemen, and that's because your host, Mr. BoomStick XL, forgot to send myself something regarding the media bias that we're going to bring out for today's conversation. And it's one of those days where you just want to punch yourself in the face. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for taking the time on your day off, because most people are celebrating President's Day. You have the day off. You're hanging out. Hopefully you're playing Avowed. And I got to tell you, folks, this game has my soul, because last night, after I fell asleep, I got up at about maybe 10 after 12 and stayed up to nearly 2 because I just needed to go one step further. And then when I got to that one step further, I was like, yeah, it's not one yet. I can stay up a little bit longer. Let me just look around the corner. That is the hook with this game. Every corner you turn is something new, is something exciting, whether it be a new, weapon that you can find or a new secret mission. It's just incredible. Now, folks, the gameplay you see in front of us has no spoilers. It is just very early in on the game. I do have some later gameplay that I'm putting together, but I won't play that because, again, I don't want to spoil anything for anyone. So maybe in a couple of weeks, once everyone's got their fill of the game, hopefully people have run through it once or twice, we'll start playing some of the later footage where you get to see my magic, like really start wrecking dudes. But thank you so much for taking the time. We have 3 topics that we're going to get into. One, of course, is the Xbox tax, folks. And I know there's going to be some people that are going to want to clip the show or say that there's no such thing. Folks, I'm here to tell you that not only is it on display blatantly by places like IGN and GameSpot, but it's funny to see when you consider how excited the entire gaming community is. And you hear what I said, folks? The entire gaming community, not the Xbox, not the fanatics. We're talking about gamers who love open world RPGs, that have an affection for Obsidian and the way that they tell their stories. And this game it's universally loved by a lot of people. All weekend, everyone was just tweeting picture after picture after picture. And of course, there are the subset community members that, remain nameless, that want to try to sell you this lie on how terrible this game is. I don't know, let's say, for instance, not being able to kill NPCs, which is something I don't know why you would do. Maybe you need to sit down on a chair with someone and kind of work that out. I'm just saying, but you can't kill NPCs in Spider-Man. You can't kill NPCs in Horizon or either the Horizon. So I don't understand where that's coming from. It's a little weird. It's a little weird energy from some of these people. But that's not the only topic we're going to get into, folks. We're going to get into a report from Corden of Windows Central, one half of the Xbox 2 podcast with Randall Thor, regarding the information about the next generation of Xboxes. And I say Xboxes with an S because that means the handheld and the mythical under-the-box PC that we're going to have. Well, it's been funded. It's been costed by, of course, the powers that be. That is, of course, Amy Hood and Satya Nadella, who are the heads of Microsoft, where the money is spent. And we're going to get into that. But we're not only going to get into that, we're going to get into this amazing interview by our very good friends over at Xbox Era with Phil Spencer. Now, that particular interview was 36 minutes and 19 seconds. I've watched it twice. I got to tell you, amazing job with the guys. Of course, that is Nick, Jesse, and John over at Xbox Era. Congratulations on episode 250. It was a brilliant interview. What a way to celebrate it. And they didn't pull any punches. They asked some really good questions that I think we're going to get into, but we're not going to cover all of it today. We're going to specifically cover what Phil Spencer had to say about the 70% that Xbox makes and how that has officially become a way where AAA development is no longer risky, because they are making 70% on every game that they sell to PlayStation, to Steam, to Nintendo, the Switch 2 in a couple of months. And that is really big news, because what that should do for you as an Xbox fan is they are doing something that Sony cannot do. Sony cannot afford to do big AAA games. We know why. Why is that? Is that console warring? No. Shuhei Yoshida on his Greg Miller interview literally said that if you want to get new AAA first party games, you, fan, are required to buy remasters and remakes so they could be funded. Think about that for a second. So Xbox is in such a great position. And even though a lot of us old heads don't like the cross pollination of games going over to PlayStation, well, that's become the business. And Phil Spencer made a lot of sense. So those are the three topics we're going to get into. But before we get on over there, let's welcome in our pair of amazing community members. Fuzzy Belvedere, how was your holiday weekend? How was Valentine's Day for you and the missus?
Oh man, so glad to be here with you guys. Weekend so far has been pretty good. Wife is off today as well since she's a school teacher, so President's Day, yay!
Nice. Yes.
But yeah, it's been a relaxed, chill weekend. Kick back, watch some movies and stuff, and got stuff ready for the upcoming Fright Night with Fee for this Friday. But played a lot of Avowed in between that time, and yeah, can't wait to talk about it. So glad to be back here on Monday.
Well, glad to have you back, brother. And yes, all I've been doing is I officially have crossed. I think I'm at the 80-hour mark, and I literally, and this is crazy, folks, have not even gotten to the first mission in the fourth biome. I had literally got there, and I'm like, you know what? I go wherever I go, the opposite of wherever the arrow is pointing. So wherever the main story arrow is pointing, I'm going backwards because I don't want to end the game, and I know that I'm nowhere near it. There's a lot to do in that fourth biome, but some of the stuff that I have found, oh my goodness! I actually been using magic for so long, Korkenstein, that I forgot how it felt to hit somebody with an acid hammer that does 380 plus 260 damage with every swing. It was magnificent to feel that blunt object literally just destroy everyone in front of me. How you feeling, Cork? Welcome back. And how was your trip to Japan, kind sir?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I'm just getting back into the swing of things. Yeah, Japan was amazing. It doesn't feel like a real place just because of just how amazing it really is there. The people, the culture, just everything there is just it's just next level. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful country. Especially when you go further out into the more rural areas, by Mount Fuji and things like that. It's just absolutely gorgeous just all around. But yeah, it was a ton of fun. I went to the Nintendo Museum, which was cool. Did a lot of really cool experiences there. And then yeah, I'm just happy to be back getting into the swing of things. I'm sorry I missed last Friday. I had training as well for work, so if I want to keep my security clearance, I gotta be recurrent. So other than that, yeah, I'm ready to talk about Avowed. It's such a beautiful game. Speaking of beautiful countries, the Living Lands is just absolutely gorgeous, and this game is just pretty amazing. The combat, so like you're saying, it's just so rewarding, the combat in itself. But I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we're gonna rip the Band-Aid right off and get into this so-called Xbox tax that is for some people believe it to be a mythical, like the Sasquatch or the Loch Ness monster. It doesn't exist. It's just, it's discussed. People laugh it off as myth. And there are others that actually believe it. Now, more specifically, I want to shout out the Constellation crew who actually tweeted these side-by-side pictures. Now, again, it's what I have in front of me. I'm not sure if this was originally from J Rock, who is a big member, Mr. Gremlin himself of the Xbox community. But interestingly enough, and again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, folks, we're not going to go over every review. What we are going to go over is just some of the statements. Now, I have to mention IGN specifically because it literally makes sense, and I'm not going to tell you who the author of both of these reviews are because I don't want any kind of bullying. Listen, the person is entitled to their opinion. I 1,000% disagree, but I think just reading, and I will read the reviews side by side to you, you can tell that not only is there a distaste for Xbox and its games, but there is also a level of I have to hype up PlayStation because. Now, what that because of is I'm not sure. Is it because they're fans? Are they mega fans? Are they being instructed at IGN to raise things a certain way because Sony funds, 50+% of their ad rev? I don't know. But I'm going to read the review for Concord. Okay. Now, listen, we all know about Concord. It is what it was. And I say was because it doesn't exist anymore. This particular reviewer at IGN says this: Concord isn't the most innovative or content-heavy hero shooter you can play, but with such a fantastic competitive gameplay, 16 compelling characters to master, and 12 well-designed maps, it's got the makings of something that could go the distance in the months and years to come. All right, so I mean I think it's a little silly personally. I want to read the Avowed review from the same writer. Goes on to say this: even if it doesn't swing for the fences or leave a memorable mark on the genre, it's still perfectly competent with all of its tried and true stuff I expect, including chaotic combat, leveling system, and loot progression that lets you build the kind of character you want to play. Now, second half of that review sounds like you liked it. First half sounded like, well, I had to throw something in there to justify my 7. Now, again, another particular reviewer, which will remain nameless, said that literally, Fuzzy Belvedere, that I was expecting Elder Scrolls. Now, I'm not a professional reviewer. But I mean, when I do review games, and I've reviewed PlayStation games, I've reviewed Nintendo games, and I mostly review Xbox games, I think the way that you do a review, and well, maybe I'm being silly here, you review the game that has been presented to you, which is, of course, what you are there to do. Now, if you have an opinion about said game being like, well, I didn't appreciate the controls because it was slow, or I didn't like the story because it went this way, you are then, of course, reviewing the game that you have been given to review. I don't think I've ever said, oh, I don't like this game because I was expecting this. The same way that a lot of people reviewed Starfield. They expected Mass Effect. They expected No Man's Sky. They expected Elder Scrolls in space, which I think that they pretty much got. But it's very odd to me that and again, folks, I don't think I'm really stepping out of bounds here or making up stuff for a conversation that we're going to have for the next 30 something minutes. I think there's legitimately a problem here. And I've said this before, and I will continue to say it. It doesn't matter what Xbox does. Their games are going to be panned. I've actually seen someone, and again, this was 2 different reviews, that in their said review that gave it a 6, took points off because it's in a quote unquote service. That it's a manageable service game, and they literally deducted points because it's in Game Pass. Now, I have a strong suspicion and a belief that if this had already had a PlayStation 5 logo attached to it, it would have had 1.5 to 2 points added to most of these 6s, giving it a 7.5 or an 8, which I gave it a 9.5. Danny Pena gave it a high ranking. Paris Lily gave it a 9.5. There were a lot of people that really liked this game. And you know why I think that there's a lot of horse shit going on with games media? Just look at the socials. Everybody that is anybody that's playing this game, including Infinite Umbra, including everybody on this panel, including myself and many other people in the community, all we have been doing is gushing over the visuals, combat, the gear. The story is very telling. They have made it approachable for people like me who do not have any affiliation to the Living Lands, never played Pillars of Eternity, but yet I feel like I belong. That's super hard to do, and they have done it in spades. And everyone has been talking about this game all weekend long. That is how you know there's something afoot. I want to get your thoughts on the quote unquote Xbox tax that to some people does not exist.
Oh, it definitely exists. And I guess for those that don't believe it exists, they're probably part of the problem. And I'll say it this way: if you're, you know, if you have a particular preference on a particular platform that you've grown up on, and your request is to get copies of that game to review on that platform, I honestly wish there was a way to. This is going to sound weird, but segment the reviewing, gaming media in the sense of, okay, if you're a sim racing fan, but you only do sim racing and you could care less about an RPG, then you probably shouldn't review an RPG. Now, if you're open to multiple like types or genres, then yeah, maybe you should be able to try different games and then at worst not compare them to something in a totally different genre. And another thing that I've said this before, and I blame IGN for a lot of the problems in the gaming industry as is. One, because they're too much of a shill to some extent to ask the tough questions of PlayStation when they have a downturn on things, or ask the hard questions about mismanagement. Yet it's quick and easy for them to bring those subjects up for the Xbox platform. I mean, Bungie's a great example as opposed to like 343. How many articles did they write about, mismanagement with 343, and how many, mismanagement articles do we see about Bungie? We did see the one about the guy buying cars, but I think that was because there was no way of keeping that out of the gaming media at that point. But there's still a lot more that's going on behind the scenes that it's kind of hushed up. Same thing with the Insomniac leak, but weeks later there was a leak at Xbox and all of that was posted. So as long as you're friends with a particular dev or people at a certain platform, then everything's kosher as far as not asking the tough questions, giving them softballs. But when it's the opposite side per se, then it's when all the spit and vinegar is ready for when they have something of substance, whether it's a game or a showcase or what have you. But I think when you look at that same person that reviewed Concord versus Avowed and talked about 16 compelling characters, people that actually played the game, that was the low point of the game, were the characters. They weren't interesting. There was no, if you don't care about the characters you're playing as, then you're not going to really care about the game. Like, you have to start with the character. And if the characters are supposedly compelling to that person, but yet they're complaining about Avowed not swinging for the fences when it comes to characters and story and stuff, it just feels like a disingenuous take or skewed vantage point. Like, I have my biases. I know all of us, we have our biases on certain games or certain
Indeed.
platforms, but it should be rather clear when you give something like Concord, saying it has the staying power. Oh, hindsight 2020, right? The staying power of 8 days is awesome. Like, there's been more traffic and buzz and consistent players playing a single player game in this early access, paid to have early access period, for Avowed than there will ever have been for Concord if you take the beta and the open beta and the actual launch combined. So I don't know. Maybe that person shouldn't be a gaming journalist. If they have the forethought to say that Concord has staying power, yeah, maybe they should stick to picking lotto numbers or predicting the weather or something that's, a little more of a 50-50 shot that they can be accurate on or something. But no, Xbox has received this tax that people want to ignore for quite some time, until they're either the hardware goes away, which it won't. They're still going to have this approach, and it always amazes me when something is announced for PlayStation versus when it was only announced for Xbox. And I don't even have to look at like things that like Forza Horizon 5, which, yes, it got a decent score from IGN. More than likely a different journalist, reviewing that particular game. But all of that aside, it was funny how Hi-Fi Rush, there were certain journalists out there that were like, oh, the rhythm and the music, just it wasn't, clicking for me. But the minute it's on a PlayStation, oh, it clicks. Is it the haptic feedback? Is that all you actually needed to make it, play better? Even though, haptic feedback, as somebody that owns a PS5 with a DualSense, the only real game that really gives you that haptic feedback has been Astrobot. Otherwise, it feels no better than Rumble. Sure, you have the stiffness of like the triggers with, bow and arrow and in the Horizon Forbidden West and stuff like that, but that's not game changing enough. And in fact, most people wind up turning that stuff off if they're doing things like Call of Duty or any other games that are more quote unquote competitive. But it just boggles my mind how, someone could say, oh, well, on PC, Hi-Fi Rush didn't click, but the minute it's on a PS5, it clicks. Was it the shadows that made it better? Was it the dual sense? I don't know. But until the gaming media can be honest, like I almost wish there was a blind way to review games. And the way it should be for all journalists, I'm probably going to catch flack for this. Do it on PC and PC only, because let's face it, PlayStation is going to PC anyway, so why not have it where they review it on PC? These games are created on PC, and you get a standard controller, one that can work on either console, and then review it that way, and not know who the publisher is and so forth. And stop comparing games or having these silly expectations of what a game should be as opposed to what it actually is. Like like I said, IGN is what I call the blame for all the things wrong in the industry. They're the ones that were adamant about killing Justice League or Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League. They wanted that game to die because it was not what they wanted to play. They wanted Batman Arkham with new skin as opposed to whatever Rocksteady created at that point. So even though it was fun, they kept on making, oh, well, there's not that many people playing. Oh, this doesn't feel like a game that can last long term. And it's like, because you're purposely trying to kill the game. Oh, let's play Far Cry 6. Oh, it's another Far Cry game. Well, it's a Far Cry game with the Far Cry name in the game. What do you expect out of them? Sure, it's great for them to evolve the genre to some extent, or the series to some extent, but are you going to play a Far Cry game thinking it's going to be like Fortnite, or are you playing a Far Cry game thinking it's going to be like Crew Motorfest? I mean, the craziness to some extent that you hear from the gaming journalists is why I don't even bother really paying attention to them for the most part. I just see them as clowns that, have some sort of like blue check mark to their name. And that's what gives them this authority to be experts on the subject. But yet those same people can't put, Xbox tags on a game that's clearly coming to Xbox, or even day and date and Game Pass. The same ones that were like, oh, well, what games does Xbox have? Like a year ago, somebody said that to Destin, and it's like, are you not paying attention? Like, are you that laser focused on only the blue, team as opposed to whatever Xbox is working on? How could you be in this industry as a journalist and then not know what is on the horizon as far as games coming from every platform? Like, I can understand if you miss a few of the PC games. I mean, 18,000, 19,000 games coming to PC every year.
Yep.
I can understand you missing a few, but when it comes to first party for Xbox or first party for PlayStation, there's no excuse not to know if you're going to be in that industry. It's like, why bother doing that if you're not even going to be about it? But I've rambled enough. It's time to give Cork a
No. You're making a lot of sense. First of all, I want to address a couple of people in the chat.
Yes, bro.
Yeah, no, don't sweat it. First of all, Cammy in the chat. Obviously not an Xbox person. It's okay. Welcome to the program. First of all, you're being a bit disingenuous. We're not using Concord versus Avowed as a one-to-one, and I think you guys and gals that are complaining about that, no, it's the writer that we're talking about. The same writer gave the two different games the same score, and if you read, and I've read it verbatim, exactly what that author said, it seems like they're making excuses for one and going out of their way to hurt the other. Now, is that my opinion? Indeed, it is. If you don't feel that way, maybe because you are on Team Blue and nothing I say is going to matter, that is perfectly okay. If you are here to be a troll, well, I mean, don't worry about me because I usually don't ban anybody. It's the people that have the power to do that. You know, Lethal Papa being one of them. You can come here and have your opinion, even if it does not go one to one with us. You don't have to agree. But do not be disingenuous in the chat about us using Concord as a one-to-one to Avowed. It's not that. It's the author. And again, all you have to do is just read the words. Use your words, as the kids like to say, right? Well, I'm using my words and saying that the author loved Concord or did everything they could to prove that Concord needs to be here, and somehow Avowed has these good points, but on top of the good points, before we even get to them, there's this take about what it tries to do. Come on. I mean, I think you could read between the lines of what's actually happening here. This is not the first time IGN has done this. This is not the first time that GameSpot has done this. And this is certainly not the last time the games media is going to do this. And all I have to say is look towards Hellblade 2. When that finally comes to PlayStation at some point, the rumor is April, maybe it's May. We'll see. That's the new rumor. The same people that were crying in their gamer chairs with Hellblade 1 reviewed Hellblade 2 and said this game did nothing for me. The story wasn't good. It wasn't a step up in graphics. Obviously, all lies. I cannot wait to see, because I don't really keep receipts. I don't have the patience nor the time when you produce 5 shows a week. What I can say is there are people who do. And when that same journalist is reviewing Hellblade 2 and pretending to cry in their chairs because it's on PlayStation 5, you will see the people who do keep the receipts putting them side by side and say, what happened? Why was it no good on Xbox? And now that it's on PlayStation 5, you're back to tears. And that, unfortunately, is the disingenuous media. Korkenstein, I think I don't have to explain to you exactly what we're doing here, but really it's to point out that the Xbox tax does in fact exist. It continues, and has it really hurt Avowed? I mean, not really. We're still enjoying it. Their scores really don't matter to me. I gave it a 9.5 out of 10, not because I was given the game for a review. I bought the $100 edition because I wanted the cloth map. So I'm in the bag. They got my money. But I think that it's fair to say that there always seems to be such and such Xbox game was good, and the but seems to always be up front to justify the score rather it just being, hey, I like this, I didn't like this, and this is my score. What are your thoughts on to the Xbox tax? Does it exist, or are we just making this up because, we're quote unquote Xbots?
No, it 100% exists. I mean, we have, crispy bomb levels of receipts, from different outlets and things like that show, this is definitely something, which is weird because if you look back at the 360 era, there was a lot of people. It was most games were primarily reviewed on the Xbox 360. And then, the PS came out with theirs, and everyone kind of shifted during the PS4, and then the Xbox One, had its debacle. And it seems like most of media went to the PlayStation to start reviewing games. And then that's when you really started seeing some of the tax, because most of the media reviews on PlayStation. I mean, it's a fact. You can look it up on Metacritic. You could look it up on OpenCritic. You could see that, when you click and you see there's, 10 reviews on Xbox, 20 on PC, and 50 on PlayStation. There's a disparity there. There's a big buffer there on who decides on what they play on. And I think that's kind of helped the Xbox tax kind of thrive a little bit more. It's sad because I'm not going to take anything away from the IGN reviewer. I think genuinely he is a good reviewer. Maybe just a little, it's subjective. we can't have objective reviewing because that defeats the whole purpose of reviewing. It's somebody giving their take, and their opinion. It doesn't matter if we agree with it, but in the same sense, it has to be at least fair. And I think genuinely there was no malicious intent there. I do think it's a little weird for the Avowed review because it sounded like it was more of like an 8 or 8.5 when you read it, and then it ended up getting a 7. I think Hargeet noticed it as well. I was on Web Dave last night and we talked about it. And yeah, it just, the review doesn't really read like a 7, which is really, really weird when you see that when you see this, actually see the score at the end of it. It's just a shame. And this is, I criticized Xbox last night for this, and I've criticized them a lot for this. I think, one of the things is they just give a code to anybody and it doesn't really matter. I don't know if it's, I think when it's Bethesda, since they handle that internally, they're a little bit more selective. They curate a little bit more for the audience that they're trying to reach, which is fair. That's what they're supposed to do, but I think when they use their other one that they use, I think it's agency or something like that, they just, it doesn't seem like there's any vetting. You're a PS oriented streamer, have a code. You like to break embargoes, have a code. That kind of mentality. And it's just, I think it's more so it's like, oh, you got 1.1 million subscribers, have a code, but you like to employ the Xbox tax, that kind of thing. And I talked about it, and I said, that Xbox should start blacklisting some of these. Paris was in the chat and he rightfully called me out. I didn't present it in the best way. I don't think Xbox should start blacklisting people to kill negative reviews. I think they should start blacklisting outlets that have proven time and time again that there's bad faith. Metro, I think we can all agree on that. What was it? I think it's Mary Station, who said that they would give negative reviews to any game that that wasn't that was multi-platform or something along those lines. It's been a while. Certain outlets that have shown, PC Gamer have shown consistently to employ an Xbox tax and report on Xbox in bad faith. I think that's where I think we should kind of not necessarily just do it because they like to give negative reviews, more so because they give negative reviews in bad faith for the engagement. And I think not all of them deserve it. I don't think IGN should be blacklisted. I don't think certain outlets should be, but for those that do want to give negative reviews and report on Xbox in bad faith, they 100% should blacklist. It's controversial, I know. But like I said, Paris called me out on it and he was 100% right. You shouldn't blacklist because it gives, it creates an ecosystem of just only positive reviews. But we've seen the other guys do it. Nintendo's done it. PlayStation's done it. And it's just kind of weird that Xbox kind of hasn't gotten onto that, gotten on board with that. But again, I think it's because of the PR company they use to give out codes and stuff, because it's not handled in-house unless it's Bethesda. I think that's the only one. But it is what it is. The Xbox tax 100% exists. It's just really unfair that we have something like this. And this is why a lot of media sites don't, are kind of at odds with content creators, because there's our content creators that can fight back. There are content creators that pull that that engagement that they would normally get away because they may report a little bit more honestly, I guess, or there's more room to make a personality and for people to resonate towards that personality versus, random guy at, IGN or GameSpot, that kind of thing. It's more synonymous to have, somebody that, and that you trust and you watch their content more than just reviews, to trust them a little bit more. I think the space is a little weird for reviewing. I think overall there's no synergy between the gaming industry and media in that sense. It's kind of hard, as a reviewer, when you have 3 or 4 different things on your plate. And now something like Avowed comes dropping into your lap, and that's like a 50-hour game minimum. And now you're rushing to get, these two other games out on top of playing Avowed. You start to cut corners. It's just natural. I'm not saying every reviewer is doing that, but it's just natural. You have a deadline, and if you're not first on that review, you're last. It's, to quote Ricky Bobby, and that's just what it is. You're going to be last to those engagements. You're going to be last to those clicks. People are going to go somewhere else to get those clicks. So it's not really fair in that sense. Especially if, certain gaming, studios are only giving like a 3-day lead window. I think they gave like a pretty decent size, to be fair, for Obsidian. They gave, I think, like a week or two for Avowed, which
I
is fine.
had the game 2 weeks before.
Yeah.
I was able to put a significant amount of time in, but the reason why I haven't beaten it is because I don't play these games that way. I certainly don't play games. I don't beat games to review and just think, hey, I beat it. Like I said, I'm 80 hours in, and I haven't even started the first mission of the 4th biome, which I will get around to eventually, but I'm just enjoying the game so much that I'm just going everywhere looking at every nook and cranny. But I did put 8 hours in so far.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I know, like, I think Lucius even said that, some didn't start till 4 days before, which is insane to do. I think the GameSpot reviewer only had like 20 hours or 30 hours for the review, which to me seems, maybe you just put it on easy and powered through, which is fine, but your review should kind of reflect that, if that's the case. This is why I think also reviewers should put hours played and difficulty. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't really hurt the review. It just gives more people more information, because there are a lot of gamers. It's okay if you want to play on easy, 100% fine. I think more reviewers should put the difficulty level so people could, people could see, hey, I play on easy. This reviewer likes to play on easy. You build that synergy with the reviewer that has the same kind of play style as you. It doesn't really hurt. Sure, maybe people might grief it, and oh, they play on easy, can't trust them, but it doesn't really matter. It's how you play and how you experience the game, and if you can help other people that play the same way as you, that's the whole point of a review. So I think most reviewers should start putting time played. They should start putting, it's very secretive on how they came to this review process. I just think the whole, and especially with Metacritic, where certain reviewers are given more points, or given more weight in the reviews than lesser outlets. I use the kind of thing where you have, 3 or 4 smaller sites that gave it 100, but because IGN gave it a 7, now you're seeing an 80. And it's like, well, that average doesn't really match up when you look at it. So I think overall it's a massive problem just in the industry in itself, that no one's really kind of working together to kind of fix and see. I think what Avowed did was great. 3 weeks. That's a lot of lead up time. It's very rare, but it's a lot of lead up time to play that game and to give it a fair shake. So when you start seeing these outlets that didn't, that's where I think you should kind of start looking at and seeing, hey, we're giving you a 3-week lead time to properly review the game, and you're not. Why are we going to give you another code if you weren't going to do the proper work to give us a review? So that's just what I think. I think the Xbox tax is real. I don't think people employ it maliciously. I think there are some sites that do, but overall, I don't think majority of media does it maliciously. It's just because they're, if, like I said earlier, they're ingrained to play and review on PlayStation. It just is what it is. We can't say for sure because we don't 100% know, but from the outside looking in, that's the perception. So I think there's a lot of work to be done, both from the gaming industry and both on media, to start giving the people, users and consumers, the real reviews that they really deserve. And just not, I don't know how to put it without it sounding horrible or making assumptions in that sense. I just think that there could be more synergy between what the industry does and how the media portrays it when it comes to reviews.
Listen, great points from everybody. I want to welcome somebody in the chat, Erica Cutts, who's a content creator, infamously known as a great Gears of War player. Now, she made a particular point that I want to make a mention of. Ghost of Tsushima got an 83. which that year, if you remember, Ghost of Tsushima got an 83, and I believe Last of Us 2 got a 90 something. Not sure it was a 92 or 93. I said it multiple times. I would reverse those scores because Ghost of Tsushima is a masterclass level, and the fact that it got an 83 is gross. I said that from the beginning. That's one of the few, I don't have a lot of platinums. I platinum that game. That game is brilliant, and I cannot wait for Ghost of Yotai later this year because I'm probably going to platinum that as well. I don't think we're crying. I think we're bringing up a point, Erica. To be fair, we're bringing up a point that seems to be a running trend, and I think to ignore it is probably not right. Again, whether you clip me like you've done in the past, it's fine. I'm a grown man. It's if you want to clip me, it's all right. But I think that this is a conversation that maybe some other podcasters, whether they be on blue team, green team, or they play on everything like I do, maybe they don't want to have that conversation. But I think that today was worth having a conversation because just read the tea leaves, ladies and gentlemen. All you got to do is look at the negative replies on anyone, not just me, anyone that has tweeted about Avowed. You are getting grifters to come in and tell you how terrible this game is and why you shouldn't be playing it, and comparing it to God of War or Horizon for different reasons. You can't kill NPCs. It's a problem. More specifically, and again, we don't do the names thing here because we don't want to see anyone bullied, so we don't give names. But there were at least 3 reviews that I read from different well-known sites that in that review had to add that this is an Xbox Game Pass, and it almost seemed because it was that points were removed from it. And that is also a running narrative. Oh, it's in the service. It's fodder, as it's been known. I mean, come on, that's being incredibly disingenuous. But look, at the end of the day, I have over 80 hours into it. It's early running for Game of the Year for me personally. It's everything I could have wanted and loved about Obsidian, and I'm very happy to be playing it. I'm almost going to be sad to have to beat the game. At some point, I'm going to have to finish the game because I got to get back to Call of Duty and so many other things. And I'm actually going to feel like, man, I'm sad that I have to beat this game. That's how much fun I am having. But again, hopefully, folks, you enjoyed the conversation. I do want to catch up on Super Chats, and then we will get to topic number 2. And that's gonna involve, of course, what Jez Corden had to say regarding the next generation of Xboxes being, well, funded and being, paid for, so to speak, for development. I'm going to be honest with you. I thought that they were already there. So I don't know if this, revelation from Jez Corden of Windows Central kind of pushes it maybe out of 26, maybe into 27. I don't know. But we were definitely going to get to that story. Sith Lord, who is a big NASCAR fan, drops a very generous $2 super chat. And he goes on to say, number 24, William Bryan, back-to-back Daytona championships. Brother, I have not watched it since the Earnhardt days. I was a big fan of his dad, but also a huge fan of Junior, who I got to meet in person. That guy, very mild man, but he's a gentleman of a man. Of course, Dale Earnhardt and Junior, great NASCAR drivers. Starkey Love. Well, welcome to the show, Starkey Love, and thank you so much for the very generous $10 super chat. He said the Xbox tax has been on ever since the reveal of the Xbox One. The media has been hard on Xbox exclusives ever since. Now, if a game isn't announced for PlayStation 5, it's marked. South of Midnight is next. Yeah, I see. I mean, again, listen, I got a chance to get hands on. That game is special. I don't know how special it is going to be for a lot of people who, don't appreciate story. The combat is the combat. I know that's going to be an issue for some people. I thought the combat was fine. Was it groundbreaking? No, but I don't think it has to be. But again, we'll see what happens. I think that game is going to be on a lot of people's lists for next year, for end of year conversation. I don't know, game of the year, I'm not sure, but certainly for production, for voice acting, for story, for writing, it is something very special. But Starkey Love, thank you so much for the generosity. We have also here Raiden Blade drops a very generous £5 super chat. He says, I don't care or give a flying F about scoring. I'm loving Avowed. I'm not busy making comparisons. I'm busy playing. So from an Xbox gamer, you can shove it. I mean, listen, it's fair, Raiden Blade. I mean, listen, like I said when I did my review, please don't, fall for the virtual banana in the tailpipe. People are going to try and say that this game is bad. People are in the chat right now like, oh, look at this footage. It doesn't look, it's 1080p, folks. It's been recorded and it's being played over YouTube. There's going to be a tremendous amount of downgrade here. I don't have it running in 4K because the software that I have does not run at 4K. If you want to see the footage, there are several people out there that are streaming it in 4K, and it looks freaking phenomenal. You want to see some really high gloss pictures? Look for Infinite Umbra, and he's playing on his rig, and he's got everything, all the dials turned up to 11, and he even said in his tweet last night that these pictures don't do the game justice. Again, if you don't like the game, okay, I hear you. I'm not going to fight you on it. But if you are reviewing the game and you are a journalist that actually gets paid for this, the disingenuous behavior, come on, man. We can see it, and you can just see it and just read someone's words. And if you are, I don't think you have to be trained, but you can read if someone's being disingenuous. And a lot of the reviews were. Ultraman drops a very generous $5 super chat. He goes on to say, I love Xbox tax. Then I can tax your ass, no diddy, because I know the BS follows. What's up, Fuzzy? I mean, listen, I would love to get back to just playing games. I play games, and like I said, a lot of people, for instance, I tweeted about being excited to play as the Ninja Turtles in Call of Duty. Now, is that silly? Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, because everybody wants this dude bro shooter thing. And because I like that, my God, some of the real nasty comments that I got, it's wild. It's like I peed on someone's cornflakes and said, yeah, eat that up. That's good stuff. It's crazy. But that's just the community as a whole. That's social media as a whole. It gets super sad when you see that coming from games media. Again, I thought we're supposed to be, professional. I thought there was supposed to be some journalistic integrity there. Unfortunately, these are things in their schooling that have been left out. And we don't name names here, but you know exactly who we're talking about. The reason why IGN specifically was brought up was because the same author reviewed those two games. And if it's clear that he's doing Earth Defense Force for Sony on one and the Boo Birds for the other. Just saying. We have here Mark drops a very generous $5 super chat. Says, I mostly play games on PlayStation, but enjoy other platforms as well. Avowed looks great. There's always been an Xbox tax, which is just stupid. Well, Mark, thank you so much for the generosity. Appreciate you being here. And I'm glad you play on PlayStation. That is awesome. I play on PlayStation when there's something for me to play. And for me, the last time that was Astrobot, which is such an amazing game. I'm just so sad that it didn't sell like it should have. I would imagine you're going to get a sequel. I mean, it got Game of the Year just about from everybody. We even had DICE. So I would imagine that you're going to get a sequel. I'm very excited about that. I love platformers. Have always loved platformers. And Astrobot is just an endearing character. I know a lot of people are like, boom, it's just a stupid robot. I get it. I know a lot of people. I like that game a lot better than most people, but that's because I'm a nerd, and it's fine. We have here Starkey Love drops an additional, very generous $10 super chat, and he says, GameSpot especially has made a cottage industry of lowballing Xbox exclusives, tweeting about it insistently, and then making a video addressing the controversy. They specialize in Xbox. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that with the games media, look, folks, it's a business, right? It is ultimately a business, and the click ratio is what brings in the dollars to keep the lights on. IGN is not absent from it. Neither is GameSpot, and we know, folks, that the minute they lowball an Xbox game, people are gonna, what are they gonna do? They're gonna click on it. They're gonna read what happened, and that is ultimately what it is. It's a business. Is it disingenuous? 100%. Is it every Xbox review? I know I saw a lot of people like, well, boom, they gave Indiana Jones a 9. Okay, they gave Indiana Jones a 9. That's fantastic. It deserves a 9. But what do you want me to do? Throw a ticker tape parade because they finally gave an Xbox game a good review? I mean, okay, great. But have they notoriously gone out of their way to do exactly what Starkey Love just said? In, like, for instance, how many times was it tweeted by IGN that they gave they gave Starfield a 7, but not just once. They went out of their way to say, hey, we're reviewing the Xbox version. Oh, we got a second review for the PC, 7s and 7s. And how many times did they tweet about that? Same thing with GameSpot. Exactly the same thing. When they gave it the low score, I think in a matter of 3 days, they tweeted about it 21 times. I mean, is that really necessary? Or is that something else? I don't know. I mean, you're all grown folks in the chat. Got almost 655 people here. I'm sure you can make the decision for yourself. But Fuzzy Belvedere, I want to go to you immediately. And I want to talk about this 70% because this was from Ecstasies. He actually had put this in there. And I had already watched the incredible Xbox era interview, which, of course, I'm going to add to the show notes. So if you missed it, definitely get over there and, celebrate John, Nick, and Jesse for an amazing interview with Phil Spencer. Obviously, they're celebrating the 250 episode of Xbox era. That's a really big milestone. And again, this is now, I think, the second or third time Phil's been on. Obviously, he trusts them to come onto the show, which is pretty good. So, according to Ecstasies, and I'm going to use his tweet, he says, Phil Spencer has dropped a bombshell, Fuzzy, that redefines gaming. The 70% and again, this is a quote from Phil Spencer, just so we're clear. The 70% that we make from games on other platforms helps us build big portfolios. Basically, Xbox no longer relies on exclusivity to be profitable. Now, that 70%, according to the tweet, of sales outside of the ecosystem on PlayStation, Nintendo, and Steam is enough to keep Xbox afloat and in a big way. According to Ecstasies, we are witnessing the end of the console war as we know it. He's asking a question. And look, here's the thing. Obviously, Sony, more specifically, and many of the journos, as well as the community, touted how much Sony took from that 30% that they were getting from Activision before it was owned by Microsoft and using it for AAA development, right? And that's a fact. Sony has said that. And that's obviously, well, that's good business. You're making a lot of money from Call of Duty, which if you just look at the numbers from last year, 67%, almost 68% of the dollars that Microsoft made came the way of PlayStation and PlayStation 4 and 5. That's a lot of players. A lot of players still are using PlayStation to play Call of Duty. Now, have they moved some of those people over to Game Pass? Sure. But that's still a lot of money. Well, I think that when Phil is specifically asked about that 70%, and he makes mention of AAA development, I think that this is a great conversation to have, because what this ultimately does is remove risk from AAA development. And we're seeing, more specifically, and again, when you talk about Xbox, you really got to talk about PlayStation. There is a one-to-one there. Yeah. Sony is in a bit of a pickle, right? They made a lot of big changes at leadership recently. But before they got to this change in leadership, they were having some problems with an identity, right? We all know Sony as being this big AAA, banger maker, right? They make all these big AAA games, and they sell well. They sell decently, right? Only a couple have really crossed like that 20 and 30 million. Spider-Man, God of War. There's quite a few others, but AAA development is expensive. I mean, Spider-Man was 315 million, right, before advertising, and Spider-Man 2 was outsold by a very smaller title in Hellblade, which did really well for PlayStation because they did day and date. Now, getting back to the 70% with Xbox, I think what this ultimately does is it does justify to the shareholders why Game Pass could live, because we are paying our $20 a month, and they have potentially what, 40 million, right? That's the rumor. 41 million is the rumored number.
Yeah.
Right. But they're also now moving games over to PlayStation. They're moving them over to Nintendo. They've always been on Steam. So that additional 70% that Phil Spencer was talking about is money coming back in that normally wouldn't be there. And that is allowing for them to do the AAA development without risk, as opposed to what's going on with Sony, where they don't have a roadmap and they don't have big AAA games from everyone in development, because they were just shifted back to doing that. And what did Shuhei Yoshida say? He said that if you want AAA big budgeted games, what do you got to do, Fuzzy? You got to buy our... There you go, sir. Let's talk about that 70%. I think this is a bit of a revelation for Xbox, even though a lot of us old heads don't like it because it is what it is. But
yeah, I see. I really wish that these companies weren't as secretive on some of these numbers, because I'm willing to bet that the average Xbox customer on average has a higher attach rate than the average PlayStation customer. Reason being, based on that 70% and roughly 35 to 40 million consoles out there. I'm not going with that BS of the 26. That was pretty much debunked when they were saying they were ahead of the track of Xbox One into the second year. But in any event, with the attachment rate, much like with Nintendo, they have a very high attachment rate per software that they sell. So they're making money hand over fist for each copy, where they keep their budget low for the games that they make, and they reap in the profits as far as for the games that almost never go on sale. Now, when it comes to like PlayStation, they've had to shift moves from going from this games as a service, which is a good revenue staple to have in your pocket. If you can have these games that constantly receive funding from season passes or character skins or what have you, if you can keep your players playing those games and spending money in those games, that will help fund other things. Xbox has already been doing that. And now that they own, basically two of the biggest games that stay in the top 10, and they have like three other games that stay in like the top 20, I would say they have that games as a service, piggy bank already covered. And by them putting these other games, getting that extra, that 70% on top of whatever they're getting on reoccurring revenue on the PC customers that are in Game Pass, or the console customers that are in Game Pass, they're now able to get pretty much either full price or full sales price or whatever for some of that software outside of Steam on like the Switch or on like the PS5. And in doing that 70% can go and counter what it costs to develop these games. Now, bear in mind, Spider-Man being 300 and some odd million, some of that is probably a licensing fee, probably a good bit of it's licensing fee. Because if you've played Spider-Man, the original 2018, you've played Spider-Man 2, there isn't that tremendous leap. So, and I'm not saying they're reusing assets, but it's a lot easier to go from a Spider-Man 2018 to a Spider-Man 2 without having to start all over from scratch. So that should save you some cost or expense as far as the development for that game. And somehow they found a way to still be over the 300 mil mark, yet Helldivers 2 outsold it and made more of a profit per sale in comparison, which kind of goes to show that if you spend these high budgets and you don't have a way of recouping the money through that game just being on one platform, you're going to have to look at other places. And that 70% in your pocket is a good way to do that, because that covers, whatever other operating expense for servers, the salaries for the studio, any additional hardware or research stuff that they've had to do, much like with Ninja Theory, with doing a lot of that motion capture stuff and building a whole new studio for the team and a whole new studio for motion capture and stuff. So that 70% can be reinvested, making a lot of that upfront costs or that high expense seem more manageable. And then at that point, as long as you're not bleeding subscribers from your subscription service, and you're able to get enough interest on other platforms to purchase along with your primary platform to purchase, then
Great
you're
points,
golden.
man.
You're going to continue making profit all around at that point. And that's the way to secure things. PlayStation was going to try that with the games as a service. Now they've had to kind of scuttle that to some extent after Concord. Fair Game is delayed, I'm hearing. I didn't even know it was being delayed. I still thought it was on target for 2025.
Apparently it's been moved to 26. At least that's that story that I read from VGC said that the game has been moved to 2026.
So Sony's already gun shy as it is, and they're trying to figure out ways to cut some of that expense by divvying up a game that should be a complete game. They're going to split it up, or the rumor was they were going to split it up into 3 parts based on that leak that, they'll sell you maybe chapter 1 and chapter 2 and chapter 3 of Spider-Man 3 or something along those lines to kind of spread that cost out and make a better margin on each software that they sell. But yeah, that 70%, that's more than enough, especially when you have pretty much the game that stays in the top 1 or 2, or at least in the top 3 between GTA and Fortnite. Call of Duty is always there in some way, shape, or form, whether it's, Warzone or it's this new app that's all of the Call of Duties rolled into one kind of thing. But yeah, that 70% is going to be the way moving forward, so they can continue to acquire studios or continue to have multiple teams at these studios, making or launching multiple projects and having multiple games launch from those studios. That's the way to stay, a profitable publisher. And moving forward, I think that's the route that they're going to focus on, as opposed to console sales like they once did.
Well, I mean, listen, the Xbox console sales have been egregious, right? They consistently going down. It was almost 29%, or it was 29 something percent. People are not buying the console anymore. Why? Because you could play Xbox everywhere. As a matter of fact, during the interview, and we will again, I'm going to try and break down the 36 minutes that Xbox era did, because they had spill for over half an hour. The last few minutes was, the game show that they normally play, and it was actually pretty good. I want to bring that, like, chop it up so we can make a lot of not a lot of content, but at least be able to appreciate what he answered. So we're going to break that down. We'll probably the next 2 days we'll have at least one topic covering what he said. But in that interview, he specifically mentioned about how well they're doing in Asia and that they're not selling consoles. And how are they doing good? Through PC, which is why they want everything to be an Xbox, so you don't actually need an Xbox. It's just the way the world is going. Sony is going to be a traditional Sony. Nintendo is going to be a traditional Nintendo. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I think the PlayStation 6, and it's going to be very powerful, make no mistake of that, is going to be a PlayStation 5 with a lot of power. A Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be, a Nintendo Switch with additional power. The next Xbox, and again, this is just a rumor, folks, is going to be this mythical everything box underneath your TV. It's going to look like an Xbox, but it's going to be basically a PC that just kind of plugs into your TV. And I hope that's the route they're going. And based on what, certain people of Xbox said, Phil literally just said in an interview prior to that the next hardware needs to be innovative. It needs to be something different, something that we haven't done before, and why he thinks people are going to buy an Xbox. Because I'm not a PC guy. Like, I don't have a rig, and I have the money for it. I don't game on PC because it's just not my bag. I don't want the aggravation that comes with PC gaming. I know a lot of people love PC gaming because you can hit every bell and every switch you want. it's just not for me. I just rather play on console. So the potential $700 or $800 box that's going to be this thing under the TV is going to be basically a PC, except I don't got to put any parts in. I simply got to plug and play. That's what I want. But Korkenstein, let's bring you in on the 70%, because I think ultimately what this does for Xbox gamers who are subscribed to Xbox Game Pass is Xbox has already gone on record saying that they invest $1 billion per year, right, into Xbox Game Pass, getting content that's not their own. That's a lot of money. Last year, or the year before, they made $3 billion through Xbox Game Pass. I mean, they tripled the amount of money. So their investment, they're making profit. Now, when you hear about this, and again, I want this to be clear, folks, if I was running Xbox, I wouldn't put anything on PlayStation, right? That's just the way I've always been. But I've also have to understand that it is a business. And the way the business is working is that they need to make money from other places. And this is how they're going to do it, by putting games like Forza Horizon 5, which is already #1 wish listed on PlayStation. Why? Because it's a really good freaking racer. It's a great race, probably one of the best in the last decade for sure. And a lot of people on PlayStation 5 who don't have a PC, who don't have a Switch or an Xbox, get a chance to play it. And like I said, we're just living in weird times. But the 70% Korkenstein, I really think solidifies not only AAA development for Xbox, meaning that you're going to see more Gears, more Halo, more Forza, but you might also see older games or older IPs like Perfect Dark and like Fable, who may see a resurgence in one way or another, and that risk reward is removed. Why? Because they have investment coming, they have dollars coming from Game Pass. People are buying on PC, but now when people buy on PlayStation, when people buy on Nintendo, that's 70% that originally they never got from anyone, right? Because they've gone quote unquote third party. I think that Game Pass subscribers are the ones that are going to be winning here, because the service that you pay for is consistently going to be filled with not only third, second, and indie games, but you're going to continue to see first party development. I think that's really a big deal. Let's get your thoughts.
It's just so funny and disingenuous when, people took that and they're still taking it out of context, or not really understanding what Phil meant by that. And somehow they think 30 is bigger than 70, which
Yes.
blows my mind, Oh, I mean, I don't know what you learned in school, but 70% is a lot more than 30%. You would think that would be known, but for some reason people are like 30%, 30%, 30%. But Xbox is making 70 back that they never had access to in the first place. That's the whole strategy behind this, is because the console market is stagnating. I know people are gonna, but PlayStation just sold 9.5 million. No, they shipped 9.5 million. Read the financial report. There's a little byline on page 10, section 8, or a footnote 8, that says they use a sell-in basis. What that means, they count the units shipped as sold already. That's why they're getting that 9.5. So I mean, it could just be bad. Could just be bad business. In that sense that maybe, sure, they're shipping 9.5, but maybe they only sold 1 million. You just wasted 8.5 million console production cost on that when you're not even going to sell it. So kind of roll back. I saw a lot of sites running with sold. No, they shipped. And that's the difference there. And Sony's been doing this for years and years and years of boosting their sales numbers because they use shipped, not sold. And that's why you're seeing a higher MAU, and people are, shocked, why Sony has, 160 million consoles. How is Xbox getting more MAUs than them? Well, because that's the reason why Sony's fluffing their numbers a bit. It's just really disingenuous all around, especially when going back to the 30 and 70. this funds the Game Pass machine. This funds the deals. This funds those smaller titles that everybody loves, that you're getting these out. You like Power World. They didn't fund the project itself, but by putting it and giving, that developer, Pocket Pair, funds, to, hey, we'll give you this much money to bring this onto the title. That helps that small developer branch out and do more. And they get that because they're able to now sell games on different platforms, which means more money for Xbox, which means more money for investment, which means more games for people that are invested in that ecosystem to play. That's the theory behind it. That's the mentality. So when people are like 30%, it's so short-sighted because they're not looking at what the 70% actually does. The interview, was great with Xbox Era. I was there for that. It was a solid interview, and I know people are kind of ragging on them, like, "Oh, how come they didn't ask harder hitting questions?" That wasn't the point in the interview. Phil was just jumping on to say, "Hey, congrats, you guys hit 250. I was on, a previous episode, seeing you guys grow. It's so awesome. Thanks for being part of the community." It wasn't for them to blindside him and, ask about these silly questions. He devolved those information, not because they asked, but just because that's just what he wanted to answer with. It's all around. Yeah, I love this multi-platform strategy. I've been saying it since day one, 10 months ago now that I've been here on your show, Boom. This multi-platform is great for everybody. It works for everybody. It's a very consumer-friendly move that eventually more studios and more platforms are gonna have to go to. You got PlayStation here freaking out. This is why Jim Ryan was like, we're gonna double down and make 12 live service games, is because they didn't have anything. What live service do they have other than Helldivers 2 right now and Gran Turismo? Not even really too much Helldivers 2 anymore. I mean, that's why they had to pay Keeley to make it win at the Game Awards. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I know you're being
I'm
facetious.
But no, I mean, that's just, what it is. That was one of their major staples on their live service. But other than that, they don't have anything else. And that's why they needed Concord to succeed, because that's a steady, genuine, like a steady stream of revenue. That was one of the biggest things on why Sony's in the place and PlayStation's in the place that they are, is because, they'll release a new God of War, so their MAU skyrocket for a month, and then they drop back down. Meanwhile, you have MAUs raising and highing and keeping stable for Xbox because they have Call of Duty now. They have Minecraft. They have, Forza. They have these games that consistently generate revenue, and now they're putting those games like Sea of Thieves and Forza on other platforms, which is going to keep bringing that more money in. So that's just the funny part, 3070, when it's like you don't really realize what Xbox is doing. And I know people are like, oh, it's bad, bad business. People are going to give away the console. No, it's just another way to play. Just like you have PC, just like if you have mobile, you have cloud. I mean, Avowed, your cloud saves you can use on Steam, I believe now, is because of the way that the features that works and using the account setup. Things like that. It's just more consumer friendly for people to play their games. Bill said it best. He's not going to try and get people to leave their platform, spend all this money to come to Xbox. No, just give them the games where they're already at, and that money is coming to you now, which you would have never reached before. So it's just weird all around when people start using, or they try and act like they understand a business because they just see 70-30. I don't know. It's just so frustrating. It's just mind blowing how people can try and turn this around. I don't know. I want to go and just say more, but it's just, I'm at a loss for words because it really is. It truly is frustrating on where this is going and how the media portrays. And the sad thing is, it's not even going to be until PlayStation decides to go more multi-platform. I mean, they're already on the Switch. People can say, oh, it's because Lego made them. No, it's because Lego was a smart choice to put on a platform that's more synonymous with kids.
Yep.
That wasn't Nintendo saying, I want Horizon. No, that was, Guerrilla Games and PlayStation saying, hey, we have a Horizon game that Lego, we could make this partnership. What are going to be good platforms to put it on? Nobody batted an eye at that. But guess what? Xbox is like, hey, let's put Sea of Thieves and Forza, live service games on different platforms that can rake in a ton of money for, microtransactions. Oh, they're going third party. They're going out of business. Xbox dead again for the 20th time. You see the disparity again. That's where the Xbox tax kind of comes in. That's where you get a lot of people, reporting on this in bad faith. Sony goes to Nintendo, nothing. Xbox goes to PlayStation. It's, the revelation, the second coming, doomsday, that kind of thing. So I just and this is going to happen. I'm telling you right now, this is happening. Sony's already pretty much probably going to go day and date to PC. But
that's a fact.
They will start to go and branch and open up their ecosystem to Xbox eventually. It's they have to. They can't keep having no live service games, or at least, a bare minimum amount of live service games without having that consistent revenue to make these AAA blockbuster bangers that they've conditioned their consumers to like. That's why a lot of people thought the state of play was, very poor, is because even though that's not the point of the state of play, to have these AAA crazy bangers, it's just more so of like a, something a little bit more, what other people are doing and what they're kind of doing. But you're not going to get God of War announcements on those, that kind of thing. But they've conditioned their consumers and their fanboys to think that that's what it is. So when they don't see God of War, when, especially when they're doing all that port begging, oh, we're going to see Hellblade, we're going to see MCC Master Collection there, we're going to see all of this there, and none of it showed up. And it's just kind of just really showing how weak PlayStation is right now with their game lineup and their consumers, and why they need Xbox, and why Xbox giving them is a good thing, because it drives competition, and that's what you want.
I mean, listen, Sony, they drag their heels. I don't necessarily know why that is. They're very traditional in the way they do business, right? I'm still a bit shocked that you did see Lego Horizon on Nintendo. I would imagine that there's an Xbox version somewhere. Now, how soon is that? I called for March. I said, you'll see that come out in March. Why? Because they want to make some money. Now, who's going to buy it? I'm actually going to buy it. I own every Lego game that's ever been released, and I play with my nephew all the time. The Lego games are amazing. I was going to buy it for the Switch, but I'd rather buy it for Xbox. So I'm going to get my achievements out of it, and I'll enjoy it there. But I think March. Again, I don't know anything. I don't have any inside information. I just think that that's when it's going to happen. How soon will you see a game like, for instance, Days Gone? Now, I've been calling for Days Gone as an Xbox release, because I think a lot of people on Xbox would buy that game. I'm one of them. I mean, I own it on PlayStation, but I would gladly rebuy it. Spider-Man 2018 is another one. I would rebuy that. I platinumed it. I loved it. It's one of my favorite joints from Insomniac. But I would still go out and buy it. But how soon? I don't know. That's the thing. I mean, how long can they wait before they do it? The question is, do they have and that's really the problem. It's the teams that Sony has, because now they've been shifted right back to doing first party, single player, story driven, narrative focused games that we all know and love. Now, I love them. Maybe you don't. I understand if you don't, but that's why I have a PlayStation 5, for those kind of experiences. But do they have the teams in order to develop for Xbox? Well, they do with Insomniac, at least, because Insomniac has worked with Xbox. So I would imagine porting Spider-Man, it's not cut and paste, folks. It's not right click and move it over. Xbox, you're good. That's not the way game development works. But they could do it, and I think it would sell pretty well. We'll see, gentlemen. But again, great conversation from everybody. The chat's been very, very busy. Going back and forth. Again, folks, this is one of the best chats in the business. If someone has a difference of opinion, unless they're being like a troll, we don't get rid of them. They're entitled to have their opinion. I'm certainly not always going to agree. I'm also not always going to disagree. But as long as they're not, causing trouble, or they're here, to be a troll, you can hang out in the chat, obviously. But I do want to move on to the next topic, but before we actually get there, I do want to thank Raiden Blade for the additional £5 super chat. Raiden Blade goes on to say, blame Uncle Jim because Daddy Phil isn't it. How did that work out for you, Eric? Erica Cuts for the win. Just asking. Point is judge game on the game, not a comparison. I mean, listen, folks, I just want to say this. I know that Erica is, listen, she has a difference of opinions. We don't do bullying here, folks. We just don't. You know, I saw what she said in the chat that she's here just to chill. Let her have her opinion. Again, you don't have to agree with her, but we don't do the bullying thing here, so please don't do that. I've been trying to watch the chat, but I also have 2 other screens open because I'm looking for stuff while I'm doing the show. Again, it is what it is. Xbox, do we believe there's tax? Yes. Do we believe that the 70% that Xbox is making, those are the first 2 topics, is more than the 30% that PlayStation is getting? The answer is just pure mathematics. Yes, that's just pure mathematics 101. I think you kind of learn that in maybe first or second grade. You start learning your percentiles. So I don't think it should be a big shock that Xbox is actually making more money because it's 70%. But I do want to say thank you to Nino Vestic, our generous friend, all the way from Hawaii. Ladies and gentlemen, he has gifted, as he's done almost every show, 1 Double Barrel Gaming membership. Brother, that is very kind of you. We definitely appreciate it. But Fuzzy, we got to get into the next topic. Now, Grant, this isn't, I think we've been hearing about this for a while, but I do want to talk about it because Jez Corden of Windows Central happened to get confirmation. Now, this report I pulled from, I believe it was GamesRank. I'll add the link for the show where I pulled it from, but I just have a screenshot of what was basically written. Now, as we know, roughly about a year ago, during the business thing that they had where they were kind of trying to explain that they were going multi-platform and didn't do the greatest of jobs, explaining that. I mean, they told us, first it's 4 games, it's not Indiana Jones, it's not Starfield. Well, Indiana Jones is going. Obviously, we've all known this. Things have changed. The minute that they borrowed $70 billion to buy ABK, now the money people are involved and they want their return on investment. That's what they want, and that's why they're making this big move. The way that they're going multi-platform, but I think it's really just a business. Businesses, these budgets are spiraling out of control, and Xbox, they're doing what they always do. They're taking the arrows eventually, and I say everyone. I don't mean Nintendo. Nintendo is kind of been marching to their own drum for years. But that's just Nintendo. I think PlayStation will get there. I just don't know how soon Sony will get there, but we'll see. Well, Sarah Bond, during that interview, talked about next generation hardware, right? We all knew that it was in development. There's been some rumors, some talk about their next set of hardware and their pair of hardware, meaning that their handheld and their magical box is going to be 2026. Well, now I'm not so sure. Because according to Jez Corden, again of Windows Central, he dropped a little nugget of information during a recent article on the future of Xbox first-party releases, and Corden happened to mention that hardware, right? When I say hardware, it does mean both pieces, not just one. It's both pieces of hardware. Handheld is considered hardware as well as the mythical everything box underneath the TV. Has now been moved past its early pitch stages and has been fully approved and costed, meaning that it has been funded by the powers that be, going all the way up to Amy Hood, all the way up to Satya Nadella. They've green-lit hardware, or at least a pair of hardware for next gen. I think what that does, Fuzzy Belvedere, is remove any of the doubt about Xbox dying and Xbox hardware going away, because that's been the big running narrative in recent articles, in recent community conversation, right? That Xbox going third party, they're going the way of Sega, right? They're out of the business. They're not making hardware. Well, we have confirmation that in fact they are making hardware. And Sarah Bond, listen, I'm sorry, maybe we haven't heard from her in a while, and I actually haven't, but I think when she talks, we all kind of listen. Sarah Bond is legit, right? She's the president of Xbox. She said that we were getting next generation hardware. Why wouldn't you believe her? I'm not sure, but I certainly did. I want to get your thoughts on the confirmation of the next generation hardware. I really think it does remove a tremendous amount of narrative about Xbox as a platform itself kind of going the way of the dodo because of this third party ideology that they're moving towards.
Well, we heard not too long before the this green light message going around that it was like codename Prime. So if it's anything like the industry I was in, where it was like prototyping for automobiles as far as parts and electronics and things along those lines, it's quite possible that their R&D team was working on this for a couple of years now and may have had a couple of different iterations. Now, the green light aspect is once you get from prototype, the pitch team has to get the funding to go to production. So I'm assuming now at this point, this means that things will be produced for the dev teams to have access to, which they probably already had something similar from a PC spec standpoint of what they were looking to accomplish. And they tend to, adjust those things fluidly up until release date. So that way the teams that are making the launch titles or the cross-gen launch titles will be able to optimize for the current hardware as well as the upcoming hardware. I have a feeling that this will still be within that 2026 range, maybe late 2026, but it let's put it this way. They've already had a handheld something floating around. We're going to see the software for that before this year is out.
Yep.
Or at least some of us will. It may not be mass release or release for the masses, but for like those in the the insider ring and things like that on the PC side of things will probably have access to it to side load it onto like a handheld ROG Ally or Legion Go. That same software will more than likely be the operating system for Prime as well. I don't know if the handheld is included in Prime or if it's going to be its own separate device, but I would have to believe that the dev teams already kind of knew what kind of spec they were going for, whether that's RDNA 4 or some sort of hybrid mix where the Intel chips or an APU is mixed in there for the AI upscaling, which they're already working on the software aspect of it. For I think it's Windows 12 will have its own software base upscaler. And hopefully they'll also have quick resume. So even PC will be able to have that feature coming soon as well. But I think with this green light aspect, that means the first few runs of the prototypes or the ones that would go to the dev teams, as well as other publishers that are making software for the device. I think that's what will probably take the next 6 months to 8 months. And then after that, as long as all of those still hold up and what they're still testing at their R&D place, that will more than likely wind up being the final result. If they have to wait on AMD for, the toolkit type thing with the RDNA 4, so be it. Or if, I don't think RDNA 5 will be on the table at that point. And if it is, it'll be similar to how RDNA 2 was for the series consoles, where it'll be great to have, but devs might not actually put it to use as far as outside of first party. But I still think 2026 is reasonable. It's cutting it awfully close. But like we've heard before, like when we've heard product names or prototype names like Durango, like what was it, Scorpio and so forth, or I forget what the one was for the series consoles before. It was like Lockhart and Anaconda, but there was a name before that, and I can't remember what it is now. But with those, the consoles were out within 2 years or less than a year and a half, I think, once we knew the code name. So us knowing the code name for Prime, I think we're still on track to see this at the end of 2026. But it's good to hear that they are staying at their word, which I know a lot of people will say, all they do is lie. Well, things change. But as far as hardware, I had no doubt that they were going to have at least one more generation of hardware. Somewhere in that generation, we might see third parties making, Xbox or made for Xbox hardware as well. Not necessarily to the extent of like the BO headsets that were sold early on in this generation, but I'm still surprised that they didn't have not a design lab, but like a Steam Deck design for Xbox this generation from the time that Steam released that, because even Steam themselves said they would be willing to work with, other parties as far as, some of the ins and outs of the hardware and stuff like that. So I don't know if that was ever on the table, but considering how Phil was talking about having Steam on the next Xbox, there had to have been some sort of conversations going on in relation to something like that. So don't be surprised if there's a ROG Ally or Asus ROG Xbox or a Lenovo Legion Xbox in the future, sometime either in the next generation or the generation thereafter. But as it stands now, yeah, they're definitely making hardware. Expect it to have some sort of AI component in it. Hopefully it's not like Copilot, but we'll see. But yeah, I would say the key thing I'm looking forward to would be their handheld, and in the hopes that it can play console apps as well as PC apps without having to do a full-on mode switch or streaming. Yeah. If it has to do emulation, that's fine. I don't know if they've abandoned the original idea to go with Snapdragon for the handheld, which would be great as far as for power delivery. So that way you can get 6+ hours of, battery life at a minimum kind of thing. But the drawback would be they would have to do emulation for both the current PC games that are out there, because ARM is not that compatible with every game that's made. And when it comes to the console stuff, they would have to do emulation, kind of like what they're doing for Xbox One and Xbox 360 playing on the current series consoles and stuff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Looking more forward to the handheld, but I'm curious to see what this hybrid box that's part PC, part console will look like and what it will cost. So hopefully we see it. This was it the VGAs this year, and then released for next holiday or holiday 2026.
I mean, it's possible for sure. Shout out to the Ruham. He's asking how much this next Xbox is going to cost: 5, 7, or 800. I'm gonna be honest with you. I think that the days of these console makers, both PlayStation and Xbox, I don't think they're eating up front costs anymore. If this is the magic box, this PC-esque thing, $700-800. I mean, it's going to be a monster. Same thing with the PlayStation. Whenever the PlayStation 6 comes out, and a lot of people are thinking that's 27, maybe even 28, because of the mid-gen refresh they did with the Pro. Mm-hmm. That's going to be an expensive. I mean, if the Pro is $700 now, what do you think the PS6 is going to be? At least $800. So I think that the days of $400 or $500 consoles, folks, I'm here to tell you, I don't think that is going to be the case, honestly, moving forward. I think these boxes are going to be super, super expensive. And now we're also hearing that there's going to be outside manufacturers from making the next Xbox, right? Once the first box is released, you're going to be able to get, you might get a Dell, you might get a Lenovo, you may get a ROG, you might get an Alienware version of an Xbox through that manufacturer. And maybe, and again, this is spitballing here, Korkenstein, maybe these next boxes are going to be built to the consumer specification. So if you are someone that can afford a $1,500 Xbox because you want all the bells and whistles that you would get on PC, except you don't got to change any parts, you literally just buy the box. That might be something as well, which again, that's perfect for me because I don't have to build my own PC. I just look on a list and be like, oh yeah, and I want all of these expensive things. I just spent $1,700 on an Xbox. Awesome, right? I have all the bells and whistles. So we'll see how that goes. But Korkenstein, let's get your thoughts on this, because the one thing that Jez did not make mention of is how old this information is. And he was told by somebody within the Xbox camp, within Microsoft's camp. So he has obviously a connection with someone, and he has a lot of really good connections. And again, he didn't specifically say who it was, which of course he can't, but he didn't say how old the information was. So now I'm starting to think that maybe Fuzzy's onto something here. Maybe it does make the 2026 holiday release if this information is maybe 6 months old and it's been greenlit, because we got to remember we've been hearing that they're prototyping. Like Jez Corden actually broke the story, I think it was like 6 or 7 months ago, that they're prototyping the handheld right now. So maybe this information of it being greenlit is older, and we do see these consoles in 26. Look at your thoughts on this, man.
Yeah, I think the information is relatively new, because I think what's the biggest drive, and this isn't to make it political or anything like that, but with the new presidency and tariffs being a big, talking point, that's going to shape a lot of businesses on how much, because now you have to consider, if you're paying a higher tariff cost, now what does that mean for the stuff? Are you going to have to limit or lower some of those, if you wanted a higher CPU, at first you could have afforded it and it could have made that budget range that you're looking for. But now when you add these extra costs in now for shipping, what does that do for your budget now? Are you going to have to kind of lower it down now and look at lesser parts because now you're paying 25% more to get these parts? That could be something on why they kind of waited until now to kind of get the things finalized and see exactly where it's at. It's going to shift that dynamic. I think the smarter part, and like you kind of said, have another company kind of take over. And I think that was another rumor a while back that, they could release consoles that are going to be Xbox branded, but now these manufacturers are eating the cost, like Lenovo and other places that will eat the cost to make the console, but it's Xbox branded, which now allows you more affordability on, if you want that $1,700, box that has, maybe maybe a 3080 or a 4060 or 4070 in it. That could be a possibility, because you're paying for what you want. I think the information's relatively new. I do think we could be seeing a new console in 2026, maybe early 2027. They've mostly released in November. So if we don't see it at the showcase this year, it probably won't be. And if it shows next year, I don't know, could be 2027, 2026. I guess it just depends on how far out or where they're at. I mean, Sarah Bond did say a while back that we should be seeing new hardware this holiday, but we didn't really get it, unless I'm mistaken. Unless
no, you're correct. She did say that. That's why I know Paris had said something to the effect that and this is again, Paris Lily knows his stuff as well. Said that what she meant, again, this is opinions, folks.
Mm-hmm.
The hardware she was talking about was the diskless Series X and the new 2 terabyte. And he might be onto something, because we obviously did not get the hardware, which I pushed back on Paris on that. I'm like, no, there's no way she would say that. It's not technically new, but it is. And I thought for sure. And of course I was wrong. It's not a problem, folks. We have opinions. Sometimes we get it wrong. I thought for sure that at the Keeleys, we were going to get some sort of handheld, at least a handheld, and we didn't. So
you and me both.
We'll see. We'll see what happens.
But again, that's why I think maybe this information might be new, because since it wasn't really at the Keeleys, he is talking about the new Xbox console. So is he talking about the actual box, or is he talking about a handheld? There's a lot of uncertainties here. But if Xbox now has finally got it, I think it's relatively new info. We could be seeing something soon. Maybe now that they've got their cost analysis and everything figured out, like I said, due to the economic climate change that's going on. That could be it. But we'll see. I don't know. I think the new box, if it is going to be a Steam capable machine, I think you're right. $700, $800. They are looking at more for compatibility and what they can give to the players and the consumers. So, if they can give a PC-esque kind of console to the consumers, that's going to come with a price point.
Indeed,
And
it
I wouldn't doubt that price point is $700, $800. And maybe you could be right too about the, mix and match, having an Xbox, Series Z or whatever with all the bells and whistles compared to like an Xbox Series A that is more like an S, or that's the handheld. More choices. You don't lose as a consumer with more choices. So I don't see how people can be looking at it as either a bad thing or what's coming out, but more choices and more ways to play and more ways to access your games is never a bad thing. So if Xbox wants to release 200 consoles that allow you to do that, by all means, do it. As long as me as a consumer and a gamer, I can access my content the way I like to access it and how I can access it, I'm 100% fine with it.
I mean, listen, whatever they're going to do, it's going to be different. And we know why can't it be a regular Xbox? Because Xbox just isn't just selling, right? Their current Xbox, they're great consoles, both of them. They're just not selling, which is why they went in this whole direction of putting games everywhere. Even some of the games that I still am a bit pinching myself that you're going to get Halo, Gears, and Forza on a PlayStation. Like that's just wild. But that's the crazy times we're living in, folks. Let's see. There was someone in the chat that's I've never seen before. Vox, Metamatic. Welcome to the show. That's great to see you here. He says Phil never said Steam on Xbox. No, he actually didn't. That was YouTubers jumping to conclusions. Actually, it wasn't. That was information that was put out there. This next box, you know how you know it's going to be what we're talking about? Isn't because we're looking to, for clicks ratios or anything like that. Is because Phil Spencer literally just said their next console needed to be something different. And how and why they're making it this way is to attract people that stop buying Xbox. Why would you buy an Xbox if it's just an Xbox when you have PC or you can play anywhere, right? Someone like me, this is perfect because it gives me entry into PC without me having to actually buy a PC. Now, is Good Old Games going to be in there? That I don't know about. The rumor is Epic Game Store is going to be there. Well, that makes sense. But the driving force with the conversation is Steam. And even though I know he said that Steam, that if this happened, it would kill the Windows Store. The Windows Store is freaking terrible. Everybody knows the Windows Store is terrible. And maybe this is their way of justifying that, hey, man, you know what? We're just going to get rid of the Windows Store. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. It's terrible. Phil Spencer himself during an interview said it was terrible. That thing's been terrible for years. If they listen, Gabe Newell is super close with Phil Spencer and Xbox, and it would make sense that you would be able to get those games, your Steam library, on an Xbox. And I think what that ultimately does is it is a bit of a Trojan horse if you think about it, because this actually works two ways. If this happens, right? Now, again, walk with me on this, ladies and gentlemen, and then we're going to get on out of here, right? Just walk with me on this. If this happens, if this actually happens, Steam on an Xbox, but you get all your Xbox stuff, Magic Box underneath your TV. This is a W for PlayStation and a W for Xbox, and here's why. Because Sony is slowly and politely moving to day and date on PC, right? I think Ghost of Yotei is the first one. I really believe that that's going to release day and date. It makes too much dollars and cents not to do it, right? It'll sell really well on PC. It's going to sell well on PlayStation, but it would sell even better on PC because there are billions of people playing on PC. But where this gets interesting is if they do day and date. Well, this is a two-sided coin. Sony doesn't have to separately make games and develop games for Xbox. They simply have to develop games for PC. And Xbox gamers who don't want to go out and buy a PlayStation 6 will be able to play all their PlayStation games that are released on their Xbox, right? Because they're available on Steam. So that's why the day and date thing for PlayStation is actually a good thing for Sony, because they're going to make money. And Xbox gamers like myself, I won't need to buy PlayStation 6, because if games are released day and date on PC on Steam, I could just buy those games and play them on my Xbox. So everybody wins. It's a giant W for the entire industry. We'll see if that happens. Again, it seems like a fairy tale, but stranger things have happened. Forza is going to be on PS5. Go figure. But
and they have to develop on the GDK. That's the other thing. So as long as they're developing on the GDK, this is why Xbox switched from the Xbox One from the SDK to the GDK, because now it allows them to build all under one platform on PC, on all that mobile, whatever it is. And it's all interchangeable. They only have to add the GDK X, I believe, which adds in the Xbox ecosystem.
Yep. I don't know if it's I don't know anything about development. I don't know if it's right click and move it over, but we know exactly what you're talking about. Last channel member chat of the day comes the way of Torino Johnson. Torino, welcome back, brother. Nice to see you here. He's been a channel member for 17 months. He goes on to say, take into account that Sony isn't making the money off of Call of Duty they used to. No early access, no special skins, no special decals. Xbox cut that out. I mean, listen, Xbox is, Microsoft more specifically made a lot of money from PlayStation gamers. PlayStation is getting the 30%. Now, of course, anyone of that 68% of people that bought on PlayStation, they're still getting 30% of the microtransactions, which I'm like I spent a lot of money on Call of Duty, which I would have never guessed I would do. But hey, folks, I'm in the bag. So they're still making money. But I just think that when you consider some of the big losses that Sony's taken over the last 18 to 24 months, and this whole seismic shift from AAA bangers to 12 gas games to canceling 10 of the 12 gas games, obviously Helldivers Out did really well for them. Fair Games delayed. Now that's something people should be worried about, because we don't know if that's even going to come out. We'll see what happens. They've lost a lot of money on investment, and Concord is just another one. That's a $400 million bath over 7 years. They bought the company. Herman Holtz said that this was their Star Wars. Probably not the greatest thing to be your last words. And obviously now he's no longer running the show. We'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see where they go moving forward. Torino, he goes on to say, because I just read it. So Torino, thank you so much, brother. Super appreciate that. Folks, that's going to do it for us here today on the Xbox Lunch Break Special. I want to thank the nearly 800 people watching live, 790 between, of course, Twitch, which I think we have one person, and we also have people watching on X and on YouTube. If you're here and you enjoyed the conversation, consider hitting the thumbs up and, of course, subscribing, as Mrs. Boom and I are on the hunt for 16,000 subscribers. And we're almost there, so you can help us get there. Fuzzy Belvedere, let's sell the brand, but not just your brand, of course, which is the best place for anything and everything in the racing genre. We want to sell the Mrs. brand, because she has a horror podcast called Fright Night with Ferocious Fees, Friday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where you guys watch movies. You talk about some really bad B movies that, of course, are always funny to talk about. And more importantly, where they can follow both of you guys on social media.
As always, greatly appreciate being on here with you, Boom. So glad we got Corkenstein back. Welcome back. And I'm pretty sure we'll hear about the travels here later and stuff. But man, oh man, enjoy gaming. Get ready to clear some of your hard drive space for Avowed. It's if you didn't do the early access, I'd say it's definitely worth giving it a try. If you're already subscribed to Game Pass, it can't hurt, other than the time it takes to download it to your console. So definitely give that a try. And for those that want to hear my rambles and rants on anything gaming related, you can find me on pretty much all social media except for Facebook at Fuzzy_Belvedere, or just do a search for Fuzzy Belvedere. And then if you like horror movies or horror games, definitely check out me and my wife's podcast Friday nights at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, called Fright Night with Ferocious Fee. I'll put the link in the chat. This week's movie for Friday is going to be Humane from I think it's the one from 2024. So check that one out. Join the conversation, hang out in the chat. Hope to see you guys there Friday. And then for everybody here, hit that like button if you haven't already. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. We greatly appreciate it. And hope to see you guys here Friday morning for Breakfast with Boom at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Oh, and you can also find me on FSB later on tonight on Fun Speculations channel at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, Fun Speculation podcasts on Fun Speculations channel. Thanks again.
Nice. Very great to have you here as always, brother. Super appreciate it. Corkenstein, let's sell your brand, brother. Obviously, this is the first show you're back since you went on vacation. So we'll get you back again here Friday morning on Breakfast at Boom, along with Fuzzy Belvedere. Who knows? You never know when Crispy Bomb may show up, and we're going to have Silent Cypher making his return as well. And I believe my nephew will be opening and closing the show as he's learning to be a podcaster. And of course, he wants Theo to teach him. And of course, he's opened and closed the show twice. This will be the third time he's doing that. He's been getting better and more confident as he continues to learn the business. Sell the brand, brother. Obviously, Game Pass Gumbo is something that not only is unique in its wording, but the way that you guys do the show is very unique and different. Because if you didn't know, folks, Game Pass Gumbo celebrates games that are in the service, but also they make food that surrounds said game. I hope that you guys go the way of Avowed. I just don't know which way you guys are going to go. That would be super cool. And you have another Xbox show that has been on hiatus. Any updates for that, Corkenstein? Where can they subscribe to your YouTube channel? But more importantly, follow you on social media.
Yeah, so thank you guys to everybody. Like I said, you have some of the greatest chat here. I absolutely love this community. Like, we may not agree on everything, but for the most part, everybody here is super civil, super knowledgeable. So big thanks to your community and the people in the chat right now. You guys are pretty amazing. Same thing. Thank you for inviting me as well. I'm so glad to finally be back. I'll be seeing both of you gentlemen on Friday for Breakfast with Boom. And then, yeah, for me, you guys can follow me. I'm all over social. Just look up for Corkenstein. I'm all over. Just Corkenstein on X, on Blue Sky, on Threads, wherever. That's where majority of my horrible takes and news info for shows coming up will be. For that, Game Pass Gumbo, yes, we are gonna, I think, just have a quick roundtable discussion about what we like about Avowed, kind of things like that. We'll be having some fun with that. I don't know if we'll have a cooking segment because, like I said, there's a lot of ways we could go. There are some pretty cool not recipes, but like meals that you could buy and things like that. So maybe we might do something fun with that.
Maybe make your own ale or something.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish. I've actually have made my own beer before a long time ago, and it came out decently. It came out all right. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see with that. Xbox talks. Yes, we are still kind of getting everything. With me leaving on vacation, it kind of threw a little monkey wrench on getting things going. I'm kind of not the driving force behind it, but the one that really wants to kind of get something going. So when I kind of disappear for a bit, makes it hard to kind of get some plans going. But hopefully that can return soon for the Xbox subreddit community and just everybody in general. Maybe I might do some more live plays or some late reviews. They don't really get clicks because, like I said, if you're not first, you're last. But it still wouldn't help just to have the content out. So we're in the planning phases as a team of the mods on where we want to go with that. But hopefully we'll have some new information soon. But yes, this weekend, I believe we are going to do something light for Avowed on Game Pass Gumbo. Just check me out on Twitter. I'll be posting all the details there in the next few days.
Nice. Looking forward to hearing that. And again, thank you folks for tuning in, checking out the show. 3 topics. What I'll do, of course, is I'm going to chop them down later this evening and make them into more digestible content in the form of videos, which a lot of people have been enjoying because, well, some people don't have. And normally we only do like a 70-minute show. Today went a little bit longer because we were in depth on some of the topics. And we had a third person here, which is awesome. So if you enjoyed the conversation, you can watch the 2-hour show if you came late, and it'd be on replay soon enough or on video on demand for YouTube. or just wait for me to chop these down. And I cut out all the shenanigans. It's usually just me talking, guest, me getting us out of here. And you can, get all the information without the minutia of the in the middle stuff. And a lot of people have been, messaging me with really positive feedback, which is why we decided to do our own breakdown of these, making them into videos. But that's going to do it for us here today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for all of the super chats that came in, the channel memberships that happened behind the scenes and continue to fund the show in a big way. And of course, I'm going to close the show with something that's incredibly important to me, folks. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he would say, Craig, treat others how you want to be treated. And also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, son. I can guarantee you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. And we'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Lunch Break Special.